Today on Locked On Women's Basketball, could the Las Vegas Aces be headed to the WNBA lottery? I'm going to get into it with Jamie Steyer Johnson. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. My name is Chelsea Leite, and I'm here with Jamie Steyer Johnson. We're going to get into the Las Vegas Aces, and I mean, they're just in an interesting point of the season. Last week, they lost 3 games in a row against the Minnesota Lynx, the Phoenix Mercury, and the Seattle Storm, not in that order. I was just, trying to list them off the top of my head. So we're going to talk about what went wrong in those games. Then we're going to talk about the Aces roster, in particular, what these teams need to do to fix what they have going for them, if they can fix anything, what's going wrong. And then in the last segment, we will talk about other teams in the WNBA that are in that end of playoff range that could possibly beat out the Las Vegas Aces for one of those last playoff spots. I mean, we're recording this on Wednesday, June 25th. So by the time you listen to this on Thursday, the Aces will have played this Connecticut Sun. We're assuming it's going to be a win, but there were so many upsets in the WNBA last night that, I mean, you never know. But at the same time, I don't think that any of these points really will be changed by the result of this game tonight against the Connecticut Sun. But just wanted to let you know that, if we don't talk about something that happens in the Connecticut Sun game, it's because we can't see the future. We are not. I know, I wish, right? That makes things so much easier. So that's what we're going to get into today. So thanks for listening. And Jamie, I mean, we talked yesterday on our other podcast, our Hoop Stats, and we just kind of tried to break down the games last night, and we were wrong. We were wrong. It was a night of upsets last night in the WNBA, but I think, we won't get into many of those, but we could bring them up when we talk about the Aces. But for you, I mean, were you shocked about how the Aces have just started this season?
I mean, I think I've been surprised. I wouldn't go to the level of shocked. It's kind of been a progression of something we've seen over the last couple of years. Back when Asia really came into her own, they had Jackie Young come into her own as well. They were able to bring in Chelsea Gray, and then, they had Candace Parker for a short time, but in the preseason before that year, people were talking about that. And so that was kind of the era of the quote unquote super team. And that's what we heard thrown around a lot. You don't really hear that term anymore for good reason. And I'm very relieved for that because has been discussed a lot in the WNBA, everyone's kind of a super team when you only have 150-ish roster spots. Like, you're going to have the best of the best everywhere. And so I think that the Aces were a little bit ahead of the curve as far as really identifying, picking up, and developing that top talent where they were able to accumulate a lot of stars. But they've been kind of behind the curve on filling out the rest of the roster in the way that many of the teams we're seeing have success now have done, where they're identifying their specific needs, the gaps that they need filled, getting those role players into the exact spot that they need. And so a player like Aaliyah Nye that they were able to get from the draft, big. Okay, we're good. Has been really big for them, but they need more of those kinds of players. And that's where I think they're being separated from some of those top competitive teams right now. Their stars are still great, but it's the down the roster where they're floundering a little bit.
Yeah. And do you think, has that been something that has always been the Aces' identity in their, if we'll call it a dynasty era, or other teams have just caught up to them, or have they lost bench depth that they once had?
A little bit of both. They've relied very heavily upon their starters pretty consistently. But then you have players like, Alicia Clark, who was there last year, losing her, just a veteran presence that you could bring in and feel pretty confident about on a consistent basis. That definitely was a tough blow. Even, Kate Martin, who they got in the draft last year, and then she gets picked up in the expansion draft. Like, that's someone who they were able to fairly consistently toss out there for even just she averaged 11 and a half minutes a game last year. Like, that's 11 pretty solid minutes. Then you have Tiffany Hayes, same deal. Megan Gustafson, someone who's been very regularly in the rotation in the post, has been hurt this year. So I think that they've lost some of the depth pieces. They also lost a starter in Kelsey Plum, and so that brings some of the depth. It moves it up a little bit. And so beyond that, like, I do think that that's been a pretty consistent issue, and it's only getting worse
as other teams get better.
Exactly. And so that's where I think that it's not a new issue, but it's a compounding issue, because then you get into this whole snowball effect of you're relying really heavily upon your starters. That makes them more prone to injury. Like, they're keeping the minutes fairly limited this year, as far as, the highest minutes that anyone is playing is Asia, and that's just over 32. But like, as the year goes on, as you get more into crunch time, we're gonna see their starters play even more minutes. And so it's going to be even more crucial to be able to find anyone that's going to contribute coming in off the bench outside of Aaliyah Nye, who's been pretty much the most consistent coming in for them.
So let's go back to last week's games. They lost 3 games in a row, which, again, if you're thinking about the Aces of the past 3 seasons, that's not something that happens to them. I mean, they had a season where I believe they only lost 5 games when they won the championship, I believe in 2023. So, I mean, it's losing 3 in a row is not the best. They lose to the Phoenix Mercury, the Minnesota Lynx, and then the Seattle Storm last week. So, like, for you, one, what was the biggest factor in those losses? And, I mean, Seattle, Minnesota, and Phoenix are among the top 4 or 5 teams in the league right now. So what edge don't the Aces have to go up against these top teams this season?
Well, for one, having Asia Wilson out for 2 of those 3 games hurt quite a bit. Yep. But beyond that, I mean, as we've said, they were the ones that were stacking up the talent before a lot of other teams were. And so you should have other players that can step up in her absence. And that simply was not there. I think that it was kind of from game to game what the issue was. Against Phoenix, you look at it and you say, okay, Chelsea Gray had 20 points, Jackie Young had 15, Jewel Lloyd had 17. Finally, you have some people stepping up. You even had Kirsten Bell come in off the bench for 8 points, but you give up 76 on 46% shooting from inside the 3-point, from 2-point against Phoenix. You have too many opportunities coming on the offensive glass when you give up 14 offensive rebounds. They had 10 steals that Phoenix got against them. And so there's just kind of down the line of not taking care of the ball, not being able to secure rebounds well enough. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, was really big. I mean, on top of that, 22 turnovers by the Aces. So that was kind of the issue there. And then you have this bit of a swing against Minnesota where you go out there and really no one could score the ball. You had 12 points from Jewel Lloyd, who was your leading scorer, and then you had Tiffany Mitchell coming off the bench for 10. And so there it was really an offensive issue, and that's not exactly shocking against a team like the Lynx, where you have a very, very strong defensive identity. They are a team that is going to make it really difficult for you to get to what you want to do, as well as very solid offensively. They had a lot of really significant contributions, and that's even with Nafisa Collier leaving the game early. And so that was a very full team win from the Lynx. That felt a little bit more of like a Lynx performing extremely well and bouncing back from a little bit of a tough stretch of their own than as much of an Aces issue, but it just kind of highlighted the issues that the Aces have had. And then against Seattle, you get Asia back. You even have 3 other double-digit scorers, but at the end of the day, the Storm also had 4 double-digit scorers, and so you just were not able to slow down their starters enough. Nneka Ogwumike going 11 of 16 from the floor. The team as a whole shooting for almost 48% from 3. Like, again, it was kind of the defense there. So Asia said multiple times that it's the defense that's getting them, and that has consistently been pretty true. We saw their defense improve significantly against Indiana, where they were able to snap their losing streak at home, beating the Fever, but they're going to have to do that more night in and night out in order to stay competitive and to compete against these other top teams to keep themselves in the playoff race. And to do that, you probably also need depth, because when you get tired, what's the first thing that goes is your defense.
Exactly. All right, so let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to evaluate some of the moves that the Las Vegas Aces have made and maybe talk about what they can do right now to fix the fact that their season isn't going to plan. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped into a personal oasis. If you're wanting to update your patio this season, WayFair has made it so easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours, that's comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. WayFair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space: conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, literally everything you need, including string lights to set the vibe. It's like giving your backyard the resort feel without having to leave your house. I mean, for me, I live in a city, so having a great backyard space is essential to being able to enjoy the outdoors without having to leave the city. And so, WayFair is so great for being able to go on and find exactly what you need for the price that you need. And delivery is free, fast, and totally hassle-free, even with large items, so you don't have to worry about lugging anything, especially like me when you live alone and have nobody to help you lift things from your car into the yard. So don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, I am back with Jamie Steyer Johnson. I am Chelsea Leite, and we are talking about the Las Vegas Aces of 2025, which are different from the Las Vegas Aces of years past. And I mean, right now they are sitting outside of the playoff picture. I mean, it's still early in the season, but it just made me think that now is the time to kind of talk about what they could do to fix their season. Right now, they're sitting in 9th place in the WNBA standings with a record of 6-7. By the time you watch this tomorrow, that record could be 7-7. It could be 6-8, depending on how they play against the Connecticut Sun tonight on Wednesday, which is also the night of the NBA draft, which is why we're filming this today. So let's get into maybe the biggest thing that the Aces did over the offseason, which was trade Kelsey Plum essentially for Jewel Lloyd. There was a lot of different things moving around, but essentially the trade was you get rid of Kelsey Plum, she goes to LA, then you get Jewel Lloyd from the Seattle Storm. So we're almost 2 months in, give or take a few days, to this WNBA season. How do you evaluate the move to replace Kelsey Plum with Jewel Lloyd?
I think the hard thing about this trade is that when you break it down, yes, it's pretty easy to say it's Jewel Lloyd for Kelsey Plum, but there's some other aspects of it. The most important to me being that you also gave up your first-round draft pick next year.
Yep.
And so, as you kind of tease, if you end up in the lottery, you don't own that pick. And so I do think that part of the benefits for Vegas are that they did get the number 13 pick, and that is something that they ended up being able to do something with, right? And so I do think that it's tough because Kelsey has been having a really good season. I do think that she was probably ready for a change of scenery. I just think that as far as what Vegas needed, it wasn't necessarily another star. I would have probably taken 2 to 3 really good bench pieces
Yeah.
over Jewel Lloyd, because the thing is that she has a good relationship with players on the Aces. Like, she, I think, has been bought into what her role is supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the role they have for her is what the Aces needed the most. Like, I mean, when you look at the fact that Leah Rue was part of that whole trade,
Yeah.
just imagine a scenario in which she ended up in Vegas instead, and maybe they got some other draft picks or, you know, whatever that ripple effect would have been. The interior is where the Aces have such massive issues, because you have Asia Wilson in there, and then you have, again, Meg Gustafson's out, Cheyenne Parker-Tyus out, and then you have Kia Stokes, who is not giving what needs to be given.
Yes.
And yeah, so that I don't think it's anything about Jewel specifically. It's more about the top to bottom roster construction for the Aces and their long-term potential, given the fact that they have the fewest assets secured going forward in the entire league.
And that's saying a lot given what's going on next year in the league.
Yeah, it's really drastic. Like, I was looking at it and I thought that was the case, and so I had to go through and like double, triple check, and it is in fact the case. Like, the only players they have secured contractually going forward would be, they have the option to give Kirsten Bell another contract. Don't think that'll probably happen. And then they have Aaliyah Nye and Liz Kitley on their rookie scale contracts, and so they can keep them. But beyond that, every single player is an unrestricted free agent, which, you know, you have Asia Wilson saying that she wants to stay in Vegas, you know, that this is her team, this is her program. You have plenty of players that have said they really like it there, but if things continue to go poorly and things don't get figured out, I mean, you've been kind of running around without a general manager for how long? Changes have not been made for multiple years now in areas that they desperately have needed to be, and now it's all kind of coming to a head. So you're going to have some people that are going to have some tough decisions to be made, and Jewel Lloyd is not exempt from that. Like, she very well could say, all right, it's time to go try something else out. This was a good pit stop, but it just ain't working.
I think the difference too is, like, when all of these current core Aces players were signed and they made these commitments and they said, you know, Vegas is the place we want to be, blah, blah, blah. This was a time where Vegas was like the team that was making these players feel like true professional athletes, in the fact that they were, you know, that they were one of the first teams to have like a true dedicated practice facility. Their ownership was really bought in, you know, all of the stuff that they were giving them, either, you know, on the books or not on the books, as you can dive into. But the difference now is that most of the other teams in the league can give them the exact same thing without all of the drama of, like, where's your general manager? Your team is losing, blah, 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 blah. So that kind of adds like a little bit of a heightened, you know, sense of urgency to the Las Vegas Aces, because they don't have that one up on all these teams anymore, as, you know, the rest of the league catches up. And I mean, great on them for being the trendsetters. They, you know, played a huge part in advancing the WNBA into a place where it needed to go. But I think, and I mean, I don't blame them for making the decision to trade away their first round pick, because, you know, you have Asia Wilson on the team, you have Jackie Young, you have Chelsea Gray, like all of these elite players on the team. You don't expect that you're going to go into the lottery. You don't expect that you're going to need to, you know, have that asset of your first round pick. You know, you don't think that there's any world where you're going to get a top 5 pick in the WNBA draft in 2026. Now it's not so much, because, like I said, they are currently, like, if the playoffs started today, they would be in a lottery spot. So, I mean, it's, you know, we're still early enough in the season that these things can be fixed. It's still at a point where they could, you know, go on a streak and bounce up in the standings. They're coming off a time where Asia Wilson missed a few games with her concussion. So I don't think, like, I just think that now's the time. But like, looking back on that trade now, giving away your first round pick and now being in this position, it just it's rough. It couldn't have, it's going in a way that is not good for the Aces. But I mean, the interesting part now is that other teams can compete with them in terms of, treatment of players and environment and winning situation, et cetera, et cetera. So we are going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to kind of finish up this conversation by talking about other teams in the WNBA that have shocked us and could potentially beat the Las Vegas Aces for one of those last playoff spots. The playoff picture right now, I mean, again, I'm going to say it again, it's still so early. But the fact that we have some of these players or some of these teams, going on a surge that we did not expect at the beginning of the season makes it a little bit trickier for the Aces. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. We will be back in a minute.
Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by SKIMS for Men. When I found out SKIMS was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've so often been called the Kardashian of women's basketball. So getting the opportunity to try SKIMS, knowing about their quality from friends and family, it lives up to the hype. I tried the boxer brief. It works really well with an active lifestyle, whether I'm working out or I'm just doing something socially. SKIMS boxer brief really works, stays in place all day. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Go to SKIMS Men's section over at skims.com/LockedOnNBA or check out that section in the SKIMS store. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, skims.com now with SKIMS underwear for men.
All right, we are back. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm Chelsea Leite, joined by Jamie Steyer Johnson, and we have been talking about the Las Vegas Aces and the just kind of shift in performance that they've had this year compared to what you may call their dynasty of years past. They won back-to-back championships in 2022 and 2023, and then made it to the NBA semifinals in 2024, where they lost to the New York Liberty, right? I'm not getting that wrong? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Perfect. I start a sentence and then sometimes I'm like, where's this going? I think that's a Michael Scott quote as well. But
yep. I hope I find it along the way.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get we've been talking about the Aces. And I think one of the biggest things in this conversation is talking about the other teams that could potentially beat them. Because like I mentioned earlier on, the Aces are currently, as we record this on Wednesday, in the 9th spot in the WNBA. They could bump up depending on what happens in the league tonight. But as of right now, like, they're not in a playoff spot. And the shocking thing is that the Golden State Valkyries have shot up to be in the 6th position as of right now. The Phoenix Mercury are doing much better than everybody thought they would be doing. The Seattle Storm looks incredible. Of course, you have the Lynx and the Liberty that are up at the top. And then you have these teams kind of on the brink as well, like the Washington Mystics, who, again, are just doing a lot better than people thought they would going into the season. And that leaves a struggling Aces team on this weird little brink of playoff spot versus not playoff spot. And I mean, it's interesting to think where we could be in a few months' time when we're really getting down to, one game is the separator between these playoff teams. So, for you, I mean, the two teams that intrigue me the most that are currently in the playoff picture are, of course, the Golden State Valkyries and the Washington Mystics. I guess my question for you is, like, of the two, which one of them has surprised you the most compared to what we may have been saying with them before the season even started?
It's hard to say which one surprises me more because I think they both are very pleasant surprises and for a lot of similar reasons.
Yeah.
Where you have a new coach.
Sometimes a new team.
Yeah. You have a new coach. You have a very different team than what they had for the Mystics the year prior. For the Valkyries, obviously a new franchise. And so I think that there were just so many unknowns where you could look at it and you could say, all right, they have these pieces that we feel okay about, but I think that maybe the Mystics are a little bit more surprising because they have more players that have played together in some capacity, but also they had these rookies that have really been carrying a lot of the load, where the Valkyries, my thing with the Valkyries was always that I liked the pieces they had brought together, but I didn't know if they had enough in the tank to really compete night in and night out, and they've proved that they do. But I thought that they have a good amount of really proven pieces. But for Washington, it's okay. Shakira Austin has been hurt consistently throughout her career. You have Sonia Citron and Kiki Iriafen that are coming in that haven't played in the league before. And so, you have all these players that are relatively unproven, where the Valkyries at least have players that have proven what they're capable of. We just maybe didn't know what their ceiling was. And so both of these teams, I think, have been incredible. I mean, we're talking about a Mystics team that beat the Lynx last night with Nafisa Collier out, but they also were missing Brittany Sykes. Like, they just have been on such a tear. And then the Valkyries are missing, a third of their roster to Eurobasket. And so that's the other part of this, too, that when you tie it back to the Aces, this is Natalie Nakase that came from the Aces. I think that that's something that has been a little bit undersold, is they lost not just one but two top assistants. And I mean, look, I'm the kid of an assistant coach, and I will tell you that assistants are the ones that are kind of in the background. They don't get thought about a lot, they don't get talked about a lot. But when you think about the fact that the Aces are struggling with their contributions coming in off the bench, when they're struggling a little bit to get players on the right foot into the right role, a lot of that comes down to the player development that happens from the coaching staff under the head coach. The head coach is the big picture person. You would have had Natalie Nakase and Tyler Marsh working really closely with these people. And especially Tyler Marsh is widely touted as a major, major player development coach. Natalie Nakase as well. She also is really good with the schemes and things like that. And so, I mean, that is really hard to look past when you talk about all of the factors that have gone into the struggles that Vegas has had this year. And so Golden State especially, you just see there like, oh yeah, that's a kind of development. That's a kind of progression that the Aces could have used for sure. And so those two teams are just, they're such a joy to watch. Like, they're frankly the two teams that I watch the most outside of Minnesota. And so when they're right there in that kind of middle tier, because right now you have very distinct tiers, right?
Yes.
You've got kind of Minnesota, the Liberty, I think are a little bit of a misnomer, maybe because of the fact that they've missed John Quell. They had Sabrina out for a game, whatever. I think that I would kind of put them,
when they're at full capacity, they're up there with the the Lynx. With them missing injuries, they kind of head towards the other tier.
Let's broaden it so you have this kind of top tier that's Minnesota, New York, Phoenix, Atlanta, Seattle. That's 12-2 to 9-6.
Yeah.
Then you have Golden State, Indiana, Washington, Vegas. And so that takes you through the rest of the playoff spots. You have 7-6, 7-7, 7-8, 6-7. Like, that's a very, very tight middle spot, because after that you have Chicago, who's 4-10, LA 4-11, Dallas 4-12, Connecticut 2-12. So you have Vegas that's sitting kind of at the end of this middle tier. And that's a tough spot to be in, because that's a very, very competitive middle tier. And then you even have the top tier where they've really struggled this year. So, oh man, I don't know. It's very intriguing. I don't think Vegas misses the playoffs, but it's very possible. It's very possible with the way that the Mystics and especially the Valkyries are surging, because they look built to sustain that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, huge point what you're saying about Tyler Marsh and Natalie Nakase too, like leaving the team. And obviously you know this best as, like you said, the kid of an assistant coach. Shout out Coach Steyer. But I think it's important to note that these assistant coaches have such their fingerprints are all over the team culture. And I mean, if you think about it like a normal workplace, it's like the head coach is going to be like the big boss, the CEO, the person who comes into the meetings and is really like, bringing the energy and motivating people and, doing all of the big puppet tier things. And then the assistant
delegating.
Yes.
So
and they're
the one-on-one.
Exactly. And they're telling the assistant coaches what they want them to do with the players. But then it's the assistant coaches who are going out and doing these one-on-one sessions with the players, who are, working on their skills every day, who are out there in warm-ups with them, running through their drills, et cetera, et cetera. And so to lose those, like, two of your biggest, most beloved assistant coaches on your team to go very well-deserved, have their own head coaching jobs now in Chicago and Golden State. But I feel like that's something we're not talking about as much when it comes to the Aces shift in culture that we've seen this year. So that's a factor. And Chicago isn't doing as well. There's a lot of other factors. It's not Tyler Musk's fault, but they're improving.
Consistently improving, and then Golden State is obviously vastly outperforming expectations. By far the most successful immediate franchise expansion we've seen in maybe any pro league ever.
Yeah, until next year when Toronto comes. Kidding. Gotta put my Homer moment in there. But anyway, and I think it's just you look right below the Aces, and Chicago's right there at 4-10. The Sparks are there. Dallas now has 4 wins too. So the Aces only have 6.
That's the thing is those next teams aren't even out of it. That's just where we're sitting right now. So that can even become a tighter race in the middle.
Paige Beckers is just getting better. Dallas could go up.
She and Enrique are finally clicking,
getting some stuff going. You have Kelsey Plum, who's scoring career best points on the Los Angeles Sparks. They could go up. Who knows? Chicago might go on a run at some point and be able. It's only like a 2.5, 3 game balance between some of these teams, and so it's definitely not to say that Dallas can't get up there, that Chicago, that LA, that Vegas can't get down further. So it's an interesting spot to be in, and I agree the Golden State Valkyries are extremely fun to watch, and I love the fact that expansion has been this immediately impactful on the league. But final thoughts on the Las Vegas Aces this season, what you want to see immediately from them tonight, tomorrow, the weekend?
More bench production, especially against the Sun. Give your bench as much run as you humanly can. See what can get going, because you frankly don't have another option.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Jamie, tell the people where they can find you and your incredible work.
You can find me anywhere, every platform at JSteyz, JSTEYZ, 6 letters. It's easy.
Yeah, and Jamie's also killing it hosting over on the Her Hoop Stats podcast with, our whole crew of people over there. But she's hosting 3 times a week, which is just absolutely great. So also does great work over on the Iowa State radio call as well. So during the college season, check out the radio call if you love hearing commercials about corn and Jamie's voice. Yeah, I listened last year and I was like, oh, we're talking about a lot of corn here. Okay, cool. I'm into it. All right. My name is Chelsea Leite. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of Locked On Women's Basketball. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to continue to listen and subscribe. And we cover every team in the NBA, and this podcast covers every team in the WNBA. So make sure to check that out. But until tomorrow, thanks for listening.